everyone. This is Nick from Tenacity.ai with my co-host Jason. Today we're going to dive into our second topic focused on FinOps. And today we're going to talk about the FinOps lifecycle and what that means from an implementation perspective, the sorts of things that you need to think about. So I guess, Jason, first, just right off the bat, what is the FinOps lifecycle?
The FinOps lifecycle is a set of phases that are prescribed for organizations to achieve FinOps. So that's broken down into three separate phases in order. It's inform, optimize as the second, and then operate as the final third phase.
Cool. And so, I mean, this is pretty familiar kind of architecture for thinking about a life cycle. You've seen it in Agile. It's honestly, you've seen it in the scientific method, right, that we all learned in school. So having this cyclical cycle that is continuous, it never ends. You're going to continue going through the various phases of this life cycle as you implement, learn, improve continuously and grow. So I like to, I think, break down for the listeners, some listeners may be very familiar with this, but if you're new to FinOps or you have a new initiative within your organization to optimize your environments, get your cloud spending down, you may just be looking at how do I manage cloud costs. What makes up the inform phase? So when we talk about kind of this first phase of the life cycle, what are the sorts of things we need to think about when we say inform within FinOps?
Inform is broken down into basically two separate categories that contain a number of different things, but visibility into the environment, the organization's visibility into the environment, and then allocation of the environment in the company's business context. And, there's a number of things that kind of fall under that, but allocating your environment out, from a strategic perspective, mapping out your environment based on either tags, accounts, subscriptions, whatever it may be. The ability to allocate shared costs as well as chargeback or showback. But one of the ultimate goals is to align the spend of the inform phase is to align the spending with the teams that impact spending the most and giving them the ability to make better decisions right off the bat. This is why they want you to do it first, right? They want to get everybody on the same page first. Yeah, what FinOps does, right? The discipline. And so that's what drives most of inform. What do you think? What would you add to that?
So I would just say, I think that you stated a goal there, and I would reiterate this goal is aligning or mapping your spending to the business. And context is it's everything inside of FinOps. So that's number one. So that's the goal. And then there's you bifurcated it into kind of two things that need to happen. The first one's the technical side, which every time we do a consultative engagement, this is the very first thing that you have to tackle is what is my account strategy inside of the providers? Like, how am I using accounts? What do they mean? And am I actually tagging the environment? What's the tagging strategy? And I mean, 90% of organizations have major problems with this. One of the first analysis we run is, what's just the total, how much of the environment's actually tagged? And a lot of times it comes back yeah, somebody made an effort, but it's 10 or 15% of the environment's tagged and the vast majority of it's untagged. And so getting that right, getting that metadata first, is going to help you with that first goal in the inform phase of being able to add context. The second thing I totally agree with. You got to visualize. You got to be able to see the trends, the forecasting, the doing anomaly detection, all those components that are the roll-up of the data is critical. And there are lots of platforms, Tenacity being one of them, that will help you do that. But the goal is business context. That's at the end of the day, the inform phase is mapping those costs back to the business. So let's talk about phase two of the FinOps lifecycle, optimize. What is made up, or what makes up the optimize phase?
The optimize phase, that's where you start to set goals around, ensuring that your environment is running, that you are running what you should be running in your environment. So making sure that you optimize everything, right? All the stuff that shouldn't be running isn't running. All of the resources that shouldn't be deployed aren't deployed, whatever that means to your organization, as well as taking a look at the commitment-based strategy from an organization perspective in particular, not from a bifurcated, the term, as you so eloquently used that term before, looking at it from a whole, not from a bifurcated standpoint. You've got a lot of teams out there that've got their own accounts. They might be doing some level of maybe savings plans or what, because they're trying to keep within a budget. The optimized portion is about looking at it from an entire perspective. And that doesn't just mean by AWS or Azure or GCP. It means by all of your providers in one view, so that you're making the right decisions on not only what commitments I should be procuring, but also where should my cloud services sit?
My experience in operating, environments at scale over a long period of time is this is one of the things that's the simplest to say. Like we need to clean up the environment. We need to optimize and right size our spending. Are we way over allocating? Do we need to rethink the sorts of tools or resources that we're using? What sort of commitment strategy can we use in order to drive lots of discounts? So it's fairly easy to say that, and it's probably one of the most difficult things for teams to do. And I would say that complexity in doing this is not linear to the size of the environment. It is in some way exponential. It is a curve.
Oh, yeah.
And so the larger the environment, it's just the hairier it gets trying to figure this out.
Hey, man, and even if I would say even if you have like a modestly sized environment, you probably don't have the internal resources to be able to do everything that we're talking about here, right? So, customers that aren't spending anything in cloud definitely don't need cloud FinOps. But, a lot of organizations can save money.
Yeah, absolutely. And we, the weird sort of juxtaposition that we see is that organizations kind of approach this as a one and done. Like, I'm going to optimize my environment. And they go through this big exercise of reviewing the environment, finding all of the abandoned resources, fixing things that are broken, et cetera, and cleaning up their spending. And they'll get a big win out of it. I mean, they might cut their bill in half. That's fantastic. But they then kind of move on, and spending reinflates to where it was. And this happens over the course of, in extreme cases, we've seen it in as little as 3 or 4 months. But typically it's in the kind of 6 to 9 month time frame. Because it's sort of like a diet. It's a lifestyle change that you have to make, as opposed to kind of a one and done.
You skip the
crash
step.
Diet. Right.
In reality, the reason why you start with Inform, right? I mean, this is why they prescribe that first, is because if you skip to optimize, you're going to have to do it again in 6 to 9 months, as you said, because you haven't solved the real problem. As your analogy to weight loss, right? You haven't solved the real problem. The real problem is what I'm putting into it, right?
Yes.
And then I'm putting all of this in, and I'm not informing the people that are putting it in about how those decisions are impacting the spend. So what happens is they go in, they clean up the entire environment, but they forgot to give the engineers or operations the necessary tools to understand these decisions. So what happens? They put all that stuff, all that work continues to exist and continues to move forward after the optimization. And in 6 to 9 months, they're back to where they were. And we see this all the time.
Which brings us to this weird juxtaposition in phase 3, is that every time we talk to someone who's been through this, they know that it needs to be an ongoing process, but they don't necessarily know what they need to do. And so the third phase of the FinOps Lifecycle, Operate, addresses this. So Jason, what makes up the Operate phase?
Oh, I think probably at the most basic level, it's automating or implementing continuous improvement and in continuous operations as we've defined in the first two phases, right? So, where you can automate savings where you can automate the destruction of, say, development resources after you're done with a project, right? Or where I can automate the shutting down of certain like EC2 instances or things like that. It's about maturing to a level that ensures that you're always running in an optimized way, and not just I have the tools to tell me if I am or not.
Yeah, I think it's putting those three things that make up FinOps into action that we talked about last time. What is FinOps? You have this accountability issue. So you have to have in the operate phase, you're now delivering the reports, right? You're now making sure that stakeholders are informed, that they understand from a business context and a business perspective who's accountable and what's being spent. So that's one. Two is that you are now at the point where you're delivering real-time data to the engineers so they can see the impact of decisions immediately. They can know. They shouldn't have to wait for a 30, 60-day review or wait 6 months to understand the impact of a decision, a project, or see the effect of an anomaly. They need that right away. That's part of the automation piece, right? Is you can't have real time manually. You have to actually automate this and give the engineers that feedback. So I agree with that. And then the final piece is this data driven decisions. Is you're now moving your organization from sort of that good guesses to now having data to drive those decisions inside of the environment, and to understand if decisions were good or not. I mean, we can automate all sorts of, we can automate all the infrastructure deployment, right? And being able to align that to say, revenue in a business line. That's the sort of context you want to be to when you get to the operate side, so you can know if your decisions around what you're deploying or what you're charging or what your COGS are, your unit economics, et cetera. Those should all be understood.
Integrating chargeback or showback into your financial systems. So, we see this often as well from a financial perspective, is that the process in getting this data out of the current systems and then inputting them into the financial systems is riddled with human error, ripe with the ability for humans to make error on inputs and things like that. So improving the accuracy of your billing, chargeback, showback, as well as the speed of it is one of the other things that's integrated into this. And that's often lost because we talk a lot about how bringing the engineers to their spending decisions, but there's a whole set of things that automate and really eliminate some pain points for the financial teams as well from an operate perspective.
I think the operate phase can be intimidating to organizations, thinking about automation, thinking about real-time feedback, thinking about business context and that data being delivered to the stakeholders. And what I can say is from experience and from tenacity and the customers that we interact with, it is not all that difficult once you've implemented the inform phase and once you've gone through the optimization phase to then get to the operate phase, because now the environment's really well understood and it's bent. Now you've mapped it to the business. It is not as difficult. Why it's difficult is because everyone first jumps to the automation piece. How do I deliver reports to my stakeholders? How do I get an executive report out? How do I automate these deployments? And that's actually the wrong place to start. That is the goal. Start with actually getting the visibility and being able to map the environment, get the environment right first.
There's a fundamental thing that you should just accept with this, and that there will be unknown unknowns.
Right.
With anything, right? So, embrace the fact that you're going to need to keep your knees bent a little bit as you're learning this, and don't be too intimidated by words and language, because at the end of the day, it's going to improve everybody's lives. I completely agree with you.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably a good note to end it on, because speaking of words and language, that'll be our next episode. We're going to talk about the terminology, the lingo inside of FinOps, so that we can all speak the same language and make sure that we're communicating across the team. So stay tuned for the next time. Check out tenacity.ai. We do help organizations on their FinOps journey, and we would love to be able to consult with you as well, backed by Jason and I and our team, jumping in with our sleeves rolled up to help organizations out. Thanks for tuning in.